Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It has been agreed that I, Councillor Kellett, will chair the standards hearing today. I'm joined by Councillors Alan Bainbridge, Jennifer Bell and Joan Nicholson. Helen Lynch is the monitoring officer and clerk to today's meeting. In the event that my connection is lost and cannot be restored during the hearing, Councillor Bainbridge will take over as chair. The decision of the panel in respect of this complaint will be made by 3 members of the panel. In the event that the connection of another member is lost, the 4th member has been invited to sit as part of the panel. This will ensure that the meeting remains quiet and the business of the hearing can be conducted effectively without disruption to those involved or a fresh hearing needing to be convened for reasons of technical issue. A few housekeeping rules. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I would like to cover some of the housekeeping issues for all of us to follow, please. Please mute your microphone. To speak, use the chat function on the right-hand side. Type RTS, request to speak. Remember that everyone in the meeting can see the messages in the chat function. When invited to speak, remember to unmute your microphone. Once invited to speak by me as chair, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you've already introduced yourself early in the meeting. If you are having issues with connectivity, try switching off your video and use just the audio function. If connectivity issues continue, you may have to leave the meeting and rejoin to get a better signal. Please note that this meeting is being recorded live to the Council website and will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. We go on to item 3, declaration of interest. Do any panel members have any declarations of interests? None have been notified. Item 4, summary of proceedings. I now invite the monitoring officer to outline the procedure for the hearing. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Helen Lynch. I'm the Head of Legal and Democratic Services, and as the Chair just said, I'm also the Council's monitoring officer, and I'm clerk to the panel today. The process to be followed is as set out in the Council's local determination procedure, which is Appendix 5 of the panel's pack of papers and appears at page 129. And the procedure also appears on the Council's website for the benefit of those watching in the public. The first substantive item of business for the panel is to consider whether the press and public should be excluded from the meeting and it be heard in private, or whether the matter should continue to be heard in public. To assist with the panel's consideration on that point, you will hear representations from Mr. Pearson as the investigating officer, Councillor Boyes as the subject of the complaint, and Mr. Dixon Dawson as the independent person. I will then advise the panel of the relevant considerations that you need to take into account, as well as a number of representations that I have received from the press, from the complainant, and also a charity called the Friends, Families and Travellers. If the panel determine that the hearing should proceed in public, we will pause for a few moments to enable the papers to be published on the Council's website. If the panel decides to proceed in private, the broadcast will be suspended before the hearing continues. Having determined how to proceed, the panel will invite the investigating officer to present his report, and Mr. Pearson has asked that the panel also hear from Mr. Feenan as the complainant, and of course he joins us now for that purpose. There will then be an opportunity for the panel, the independent person and Councillor Boyes to ask any questions of the investigating officer and indeed the complainant where appropriate. It will then be a matter for Councillor Boyes to present his case. Again, that will be followed by an opportunity for the panel and independent person to ask him questions. Before the panel adjourns to consider whether there has been a breach of the code, they are required to hear from representations from the independent person. So Mr. John Dixon Dawson will be invited to make representations at that point. And the panel will adjourn to determine the complaint, and if it's been proceeding in public, then the broadcast will be suspended at that point. Once the panel have reached a decision, the panel will be reconvened, and if appropriate, the broadcast restarted. to deliver its findings. If there has been a breach of the code, then the panel will receive representations from the investigating officer, Councillor Boyes, and the independent persons on sanctions before adjourning to consider what sanctions to apply. Again, they'll reconvene once they've reached any conclusion on that, and there'll be an announcement of the sanctions to be imposed. A detailed decision notice giving the outcome and reasons will be published in due course. If at the earlier stage the panel have determined that there is no breach of the code, well then that would be the end of the hearing at that point, and again a decision notice would follow. Chair, that's an outline of the procedure. Can I just check that we have Councillor Boyes on the call as well, please?
Councillor Boyes?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't see you on screen, so I was just checking that you were here. So, Chair, it's over to you now for item 5 of the agenda.
Right, we now come to consideration of whether the matter should be considered in public or private. I will now invite the representations from the investigating officer, Mr. Pearson, on whether the matter should be considered in public or private. Mr. Pearson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As you all know from your procedure, para 1.12, meetings of the panel are intended to be open to the public and press, unless confidential information or exempt information is likely to be disclosed. What I would say is that custom and practice in most panels of this type is that the hearings are held in private. My suspicion is that we will be at some point within this hearing discussing some personal information related to Councillor Boyes and his personal situation and his history and his involvement with the complaint. And therefore, my view, although ultimately it is a question for the panel, obviously, is that this is a meeting to which the public and press should be excluded.
Thank you. Next, can I hear from Councillor Boyes on his views, please?
On what my views on?
On whether it should be held in public or private.
I would go along with Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Councillor Boyes. Finally, I invite views of the independent person, Mr. Dixon Dawson, on whether it should be considered in public or private.
Thank you, Chairman. I would concur with the views expressed by Mr. Pearson.
I invite the monitoring officer to provide any considerations for the panel on whether this matter should be considered in public or private. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I was just on mute there. So in addition to the representations we've just heard, as I indicated earlier, we have received some other indications or representations prior to the hearing that you should be aware of. And I'll refer to these in the order that I received them. The first ones are in relation to from James Harrison, who's the local democracy reporter, and he requested that the hearing is held in public on the basis of the Nolan principles of public life, specifically accountability and openness. He also referred to some case law which affirms the importance of holding proceedings in public to promote public confidence and importance of public access to combat uninformed, inaccurate comment and rumours about proceedings. The complainant, Mr. Feenan, has also made representations. He strongly believes that it is in the public interest for the hearing to be heard in public. It's in the interest of accountability, as well as in accordance with Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is the right to a fair trial, and Article 10, the right of freedom of expression to, the right of freedom of expression and to information. Mr. Feenan also points out that earlier decision notices relating to this matter are in the public domain already. And whilst the Facebook posts to which this complaint relates have names of third parties not involved in the hearing today, these comments were made on the councillor's Facebook page and therefore already in the public domain. And finally, we've received representations from the charity Friends, Families and Travellers, who argue that there's not only a general public interest in the hearing being public, they have a legitimate interest in being able and to ensure those they represent are able to attend and observe the hearing today. It's in the interest of open justice scrutiny of public bodies and freedom to receive information under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Chair, as well as those representations, the panel need to consider documentation within your pack at Appendix 1 of the Local Determination Procedure, which appears at page 142, which sets out public access to hearings and documents, as well as Appendix 2, page 144, exempt information under Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. In doing so, as Mr. Pearson's already pointed out, it's important for the panel to note that there is a presumption that hearings will be held in public to ensure openness and fairness. Matters should be heard in private in two circumstances. The first doesn't apply in this case, and that's if there is confidential information, and confidential information is defined within the legislation, and as I say, that doesn't apply in this case. And the second is where there is information relating to the parties involved. Now, as we've heard, Mr. Feenan's made representations to myself that he's happy for the matter to proceed in public, although Councillor Boyes and Mr. Pearson have referred to private information relating to Councillor Boyes, which the panel may need to consider. That would be exempt information under paragraph 12A of the Local Government Act. The documents do contain information relating to other individuals who are not party to the complaint or the hearing today. And whilst, as Mr. Feenan acknowledges, those people have posted on a public Facebook page, it is arguable that those individuals had no reasonable expectation that their information would form part of this process today. However, I do consider that their information could be redacted to enable the proceedings to proceed in public. So the matter for the panel now to consider is, having heard what I've said and the representations received, you have representations that the matter should be heard in public and there is significant public interest. Weighed that up against the exempt information that may be referred to by either Mr. Pearson or Councillor Boyes. Chair, you may wish to ask for some more information about that exempt information to help you with your deliberation, acknowledging we are currently in public, so what could be shared may be limited, but I think we probably need a little bit more information before you can reach that determination, and it may be that you wish to adjourn in private as a panel to consider the issue once you've got that additional information.
Thank you, Helen. Can I invite Mr. Pearson, first of all, to put forward why he thinks it should be in private, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think my reasoning is, from having spoken to Councillor Boyes before and having a view in terms of what's likely to come out, he has a strong personal background with regard to the situation, and he has been subject to some personal issues related to the complaint, including his relationship, for example, with the Labour Party, I understand. And that strikes me as being information of a personal nature, which inevitably is going to suffuse his evidence and will come into my report. And it might be inappropriate for that information to be shared in the public domain, as it's rather personal to him and his own personal circumstances.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon Dawson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite a difficult one to achieve a balance between openness, fairness and impartiality, and the need to protect the confidentiality of personal information, particularly in terms of the impact of GDPR and legislation such as that. My natural tendency to achieve that balance is really, I still concur with the views of Mr. Pearson and feel that in the spirit of transparency and openness, through the conclusion of this panel, then that information, the outcome, and as part of that outcome, the deliberations of the panel anyway, would eventually end off in the public domain, which would enable the transparency and openness element to be fulfilled, whilst trying to achieve the balance between that openness and the protection of individuals' rights and freedoms. So I would tend to concur with Mr. Pearson on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Boyce, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, I concur totally. I will be bringing up stuff about my family, about my mental health and well-being, including my late father, which I don't really want to get out into the public domain, if possible.
Thank you. Helen, please, monitoring officer.
Chair, just a question which may be helpful, the answer to which may be helpful for the panel with their deliberations on this. Is the information such that it's not capable of being dealt with as a distinct issue in private to enable the hearing to be part in public and partially in private? Is it so weaved into the case that it wouldn't assist to be part public and part private?
Councillor Boyce, would you like to respond to that, please?
Well, I would prefer that my statement wasn't made in public. I prefer, because I will be mentioning my late father, who was a well-respected MP in the area. I'm going to mention my family that's on the racial side of things, and I would prefer that if I'm going to mention my granddaughters, and in my statement, which I will be doing, then I don't want this to be made in public, with the greatest respect.
Thank you. Helen?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Subject to any questions that the panel may have, I would suggest that the panel now, we suspend the broadcast and the panel reconvene in private to consider the issues, and we'll come back shortly to announce the decision.
Can the panel members agree with that, please? Right, we'll suspend this have met and had a few technical hitches, but we've deliberated and decided that the meeting was...
Just before you do, we need to wait for the broadcast to start.
All right.
So, Ken, if you don't mind setting us away, and if you can come in about 15 seconds, Chair.
Okay. Well, we've had a few technical hitches with the programming, but we've met and the panel have decided the hearing will be in private. I think the County Solicitor Helen Lynch will explain, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the panel have considered the representations received from the investigating officer, the subject member and the independent person, as well as the representations that I informed the panel of at the outset. They are also mindful of the family and personal circumstances which have been referred to and will be referred to in more detail later on, and have had advice in relation to the exemption under Schedule 12A and paragraph 1, which is information relating to any individual. They acknowledge the public interest in this matter being held in public. However, they consider that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in proceeding in public, and they will be proceeding in private. However, as suggested by the independent person, they consider the public interest in the matter can be served by way of publication of a decision notice in due course. So the matter will proceed in private, and if we could suspend the broadcast, please.